everyone. My name is Joanna, and you are listening to another episode of Literature Podcast. Today, I want to dive into the topic of self-help books because I've noticed that for the past year, every time I walk into Barnes & Noble, I see a new best-selling self-development book in the front of the store. This isn't a trend that I noticed before, but perhaps they never caught my eye because I simply wasn't looking for them. Before the end of last year, I had never read a book dedicated to self-development. They simply didn't hold any interest for me, and nothing ever caught my eye. Honestly, when I read, I wanted to be entertained and immersed into a world that wasn't my own. The idea of reading something that had to do with a real world that I lived in was completely unappealing and seemed utterly exhausting. However, at the end of last year, I started something that I'm going to refer to as my quarter-life crisis, which apparently is a thing for many people. I Googled it because I thought I was crazy. I figured I wouldn't have a meltdown about my life until my midlife crisis, as Hollywood always tends to depict. And I mean, who thinks they are going to feel that they are running short on time to do everything they want to accomplish in their life? In their 20s. A time when you are still considered very young by so many. Regardless of social stigma and expectations, here we are. Quarter-life crisis. So on today's podcast, I'm going to go over 5 self-help books that I've read over these past few months and give you my honest review, opinion, and advice on these books that really resonated with me. The 2 subcategories I've been drawn to have been Embracing Yourself and Habits. The books I will be discussing today are Girl Stop Apologizing and Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, and my personal favorite on this list, Atomic Habits by James Clear. So I'm going to begin with Girl Stop Apologizing, A Shame-Free Plan for Embracing and Achieving Your Goals by Rachel Hollis. The table of contents is really what sold me on this book. If you were to flip to that page, you would see that this book is comprised of 3 parts. 1 being excuses to let go of, 2 being behaviors to adopt, and 3 skills to acquire. Though after reading the introduction of this book, my expectations for what I would actually get from it dropped to the floor, but there are actually quite a few applications from it that I loved. The idea in this book is to stop living for other people and to live for yourself, conquer your own goals, stop asking for permission, and be your most authentic self and who you want to be. Here are a couple of quotes that really stuck out to me. Are you humble enough to suck for as long as it takes to become better? And, you have dreams, I know you do. And I also know that many of you hold back because you're afraid others will see you stumble. Let them watch. Let them see what grit looks like. We are all our own worst critics, and I think that when we see ourselves as failures, or we see our own mishaps in our lives, we are afraid to let other people see that. Because in our minds, if we are that hard on ourselves, won't everyone else be? Many of us are afraid to put ourselves out there or pursue the goals that we want to because we are afraid of what others will think of us. But if we are always so concerned with what everyone else thinks, we will never give ourselves the opportunity to improve. Although I find some of the advice laughable because the idea of regular people living paycheck to paycheck, hiring a nutritionist, or going on extravagant vacations every year is often just not a possibility. The basis of the book was good. I like the idea that women need to stop living for everyone else and live for themselves, and that's a message that I can get behind. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book on my list is Girl Go Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. The idea and general message behind this book I loved. Recognizing the lies we've come to accept about ourselves is the key to growing into a better version of ourselves. I like that quote. In terms of application, I wasn't really a fan of this novel. Each chapter is written as a lie we believe about ourselves, or at least lies that Rachel Hollis believes about herself, and then she has her own story to tell behind each topic, and then a minuscule portion of how we can rectify each lie that we/she believes. Although I think many women can fall into the pitfalls of believing they're not good enough, aren't good wives or mothers, that their self-worth is defined by the number on their scale, and that they should be further along in their lives at their age, I don't think there is any actual helpful advice in this book. At least there wasn't for me. I gave this book 1 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book on my list is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. The title of this book is what really drew me to it, which I'm sure is the case for many people who picked this up. This is the most recent book that I have read on this list, and my feelings towards it are complicated. This book is a counterintuitive approach to living a good life, Unlike most self-help books that encourage you to do everything in your life as perfectly as you can and how you should care about your wealth and your health and your marriage, etc., this book focuses more on narrowing down the aspects of your life that you give a fuck about, because Mark Manson believes that if you care about too many things, you're going to just end up being miserable. This book is hilarious and enjoyable to read since profanity and unpredictability is something I don't think many self-development books possess. For example, I'll just give one of my favorite quotes of the book. It's nothing profound or eye-opening, but refreshing nonetheless. While not giving a fuck may seem simple on the surface, it's a whole new bag of burritos under the hood. I don't even know what that sentence means, but I don't give a fuck. A bag of burritos sounds awesome, so let's just go with it. If you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen this quote in my stories. One of my favorite lessons this book has to offer is that we should always be uncertain and skeptical about what we think, and really take them apart to see if our values have biases and/or faults. Why do we even have those values? And what values do we truly have if we strip away all of the pretext? And I think that is one of the best ideas that I've heard when it comes to being fully self-aware. Not just being aware of what we think or feel, but perhaps why we do. Although I find that many of the views in this book are one-sided and just a blanketed version of self-help, which I have a firm belief that humanity is far too complicated for blanketed solutions, I did like it. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book on my list is one of the 2 habit books that I have read in the past half year, and it is The Power of Habit: Why We Do What We Do in Life and in Business by Charles Duhigg. This is the first self-help book that I read. I ended up actually reading it in December of last year. It took me quite a while to finish it, actually. This book has habits broken down into a 3-step process: cue, routine, and reward. This included both good and bad habits. Charles Duhigg claims that a routine won't completely cultivate without having the cue, and a cue can be of 5 categories: location, time, emotional state, actions of others, and whatever the preceding action was. This concept that any of 5 things can cue the brain into craving any routine was something that I had never thought about. Honestly, like most people, I'm assuming, I only ever thought about the routine first and not thinking about the steps that come prior to that action. Later in the book, a 4th component of the habit cycle is thrown into the loop, and that segment is the craving. When we first begin a routine, there's a dopamine spike in our brains after the reward has taken place, which is what keeps us doing that particular routine. But after we have ingrained this routine into our daily lives, there's actually a spike in dopamine levels after the cue is initialized, and we haven't even begun the actual routine yet. And this is the point in which we can say that that routine has become a habit. It's something that you want to do. I liked seeing the applications of habits and routines as shown through businesses like Starbucks, and the simple things we don't even think about every day, like the minty taste of our toothpaste. I think this book is helpful for anybody looking to change their habits, or perhaps businesses wanting to change or improve the routines of their employees or themselves. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The last book on my list is Atomic Habits by James Clear, and as I said previously, this has been my absolutely favorite book out of all of the ones listed today. Honestly, I keep letting people borrow it because I love it so much, because I think it can truly change the lives of many people. It's being lent out currently, so I'm going to simply have to go off my notes for this book. Perhaps the applications of this book wouldn't appeal to everybody, but it certainly changed my life and the way I see everything that I do day to day. I absolutely needed this book after hearing the quote, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, but fall to the level of your systems." I literally went to Barnes & Noble that day and bought it. I'm sure many of us fall into the snag of thinking that we need to change everything all at once, kind of like the New Year, New Me bullshit that spouts around every New Year's. But this book focuses more on just being 1% better at a time, one action at a time, one minuscule thing that you do day to day at a time. And with that mentality, eventually you'll be where you want to be. As it is, if you were to be 1% better each day, you'd be 37 times better in 1 year. As James Clear says, it doesn't matter how successful or unsuccessful you are right now. What matters is whether your habits are putting you on the path towards success. You should be more concerned with your current trajectory than with your current results. And goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that lead you to those results. I love the way that James Clear lays out this book, and the point-blank way he has of explaining each tiny action we do and the results that they cultivate. This book has a 4-step process: cue, craving, response, and reward, much like The Power of Habit. He shows you how you can use these steps not only to build a good habit and stack those good habits, but how to break bad habits that are no longer desirable to you. If you're someone who starts their goals with lots of motivation before falling off the wagon into despair because you didn't stick with it, there's so much in this book about how motivation is overrated and how to overcome that obstacle. To anyone wanting to change their life, I'd start here. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. I recommend it to literally everybody. So those were all of the books that I had for today. As much as I love self-development books, I don't think they are a replacement for really good therapy. But I think many of them can truly have an impact. And different books can have different effects on all of us. We just need to find what best suits us and our desires. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you have any recommendations for books that I should read regarding self-development or really any other book, please leave a comment. If you'd like to get more lit, be sure to subscribe to us on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, or CastBox, or anywhere else that you find us. All of our other social media will be linked in the description. Until next time, bye.